and welcome to What's Brewing Men's Town Hall. Thank you all for being here. I'm delighted right now to have you be welcomed by one of our partners, sponsors. Please help me welcome from Bryant, Loveland, and Jarvis, Mark Reideke.
Thanks, Jamie. Bryant, Loveland, and Jarvis, we're happy to be sponsoring tonight, but obviously there's a lot of other sponsors that do good things for the chamber and the community. So let me just throw out a couple of them. I saw Charlie Miller. Where's Charlie? Charlie Miller's here. Miller Lumber, Sunwest Builders, News Channel 21, Cascade Journal, Combined Communications, and of course the Deschutes Brewery. So thanks to everybody. I think that we certainly like being involved in things like this, especially when we have not one, not two, but three candidates. And these are all three of these guys are obviously very committed to the community, and I think they all offer something, and so it's an important discussion to have. So thanks on behalf of us and the other sponsors, and I'll take it back to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for all the partnerships. I'm Jamie Chrisman, Government Affairs Director with the Bend Chamber. I'd like to also welcome two of my comrades who will be assisting and moderating this evening, and that is joining me from the Source Weekly, Aaron Schweitzer. That's right. From News Talk 1110 KBND, Kelly Blyer. And as many of you know, District DA Hummel in the room here gets to relax tonight in this one. There he is, exactly. So we've enjoyed over the years moderating together. We come up and with the questions with one another and give it great thought. I'll set the tone on the format just as soon as I introduce our candidates, but I'd like to at least let you know they do not see the questions in advance ever at any of our forums that we put together. And we do have a hallmark at our forums, one of which is the opportunity for candidates to ask a question one to the other. And you don't always get to see that. And then tonight, you're involved. Once we've wrapped up with the formality of the forum, you get to take into the town hall portion, which is approximately 6:30 to 7. We'll see how that time suits you. Feel free to get up and down and get a beer and a brew and enjoy your evening. It's a tight crowd in terms of being able to go ahead and speak up. So we're thinking about questions. If you don't hear us, present them. But in the meantime, Mark's right. We have got three candidates for position number 1 here at the Bend Metro Parks and Recreation District. Joining us tonight is incumbent and chair Dan Fishkin and his opponents Brady Fuller and Foster Fell. A big round of applause for the three of them for joining us. Conversations like this are important. They set the table for many things, and some of these same issues that we'll bring up tonight will also be addressed in some other ways at our State of the Community address in June. We'll probably take note of that as well. In the meantime, the format. Each candidate gets 2 minutes to open. I've got my wonderful, beautiful timers here in the front who will have a green card for you. You know you're already admitted into the United States. And a pink one for when time's up. If you notice, I allowed you a little more time. That 30 seconds allows you to finish that sentence with clarity. So rather than 15, that sometimes just shocks you into stopping. The other would be in part 2. This is where Aaron and Kelly and I come in, and we'll ask you a question. We'll go in order here. You have 60 seconds to respond. These ladies, again, taking care of that. If for any reason there's a real need to clarify what it is we've asked of you, there'll be another 30 seconds for you to go ahead and clarify with us, please. Now, the unique part 3. This is where you, Dan, get to ask a question of Brady and a question of Foster. They do not need to be the same question, and your time is allotted for each one. Brady, you would have 60 seconds to respond. If for some reason you just truly did not get clarity out of that, or you just didn't answer your question, we have rebuttal time. Just as quickly as you can, get the question out again, or ask him to follow up with your rebuttal question, and you have 30 seconds to respond. Does that make sense? And the same goes. All right. And then at the very end, you get 2 minutes of closing comments each. From there, we'll wrap it up, and we'll come out to the town hall. How's that sound? Sound good? Okay. All right. So, anything else that I have forgotten? Anybody can think of, or any other areas of clarity? I want to make sure you guys are good to go. Okay. And that's cool. They're wonderful, and they're also going to show us what good sports they are, because they have to share this mic that has a cord that goes across all their papers and to one another, and they might have to fight for who takes it out of their, no, that won't be allowed, so we'll get you going on that. All right, so with that note, again, we'll start with our incumbent and go this direction. If you please share your opening comments, Chair Fishkin, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Jamie. I appreciate the opportunity to address the community, and I apologize in advance for my cold. I don't usually have this sexy baritone voice. I'm suffering from a cold that I received from my son, so please bear with me. I am the current chairman of the Ben Park and Recreation District Board of Directors. I served for 3 years on the Budget Committee before I was elected to the Board of Directors. The last year on the Budget Committee, I chaired the Budget Committee. I have lived in Bend for 8 or 9 years now with my family, my wife and my teenage son, who gave me the cold. And I am very involved in the community. In addition to my volunteer work on Bend Parks and Rec, I have also been a member of the Deschutes County Sheriff's Search and Rescue Team for the last 5 years. And I also currently serve on the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan Steering Committee, which is updating the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan for submission to the Oregon Office of Emergency Management. And so I care deeply about our community. I care deeply about the quality of life in our community and making our community the wonderful place that it is. I do not have any political aspirations. I do this because I want to make a difference and because I care and because I want to do the best that I believe I can do in the best interests of the community and the constituents who are the ones who pay the taxes that we get to spend and are the, frankly, stewards of their money. So I'm seeing a green card that says 15 seconds, and with that, I will conclude, and thank you again for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Grady Fuller, and thank you all for coming tonight. I'm running for the Parks Board because I can offer the district experience perspective in planning, design, and management of capital facilities. Capital facilities and the build-out of the $75 million capital plan the district has is a big part of what the district is doing over the next 5 years. I bring significant experience that can help guide and influence wise community decisions with respect to Mirapon. I'm concerned that the district's current policies and aspirations are contributing to the region's affordable housing crisis, and I expect we'll talk more about that tonight. The district is part of our community. It's one government agency, and it needs to be part of solving the greatest challenges in our community. I know firsthand the benefits that come from the great recreation programs that are offered by the district, and I know this through my coaching experience with both my kids' soccer teams. I'm especially excited about opportunities to build out and expand our trail network within the city and beyond. I look forward to working with the board staff, and encouraging collaboration with the city, OSU Cascades, and other local governments in delivering parks and recreation services to our community. So, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Brady.
I'm Foster Bell. As some of you may know, by the way, I'm from Respiratory Therapist, so let me help you tonight.
Keel over.
I tend to have these episodes. As some of you may know, I was reluctant to participate in this forum because of the charge, and I did offer to pay the costs so that everybody could come free. And I do honor your presence here, and I will be happy to buy the next round of drinks for you. I want to say that I think the Park District has lost its way in some very fundamental ways. I think it's become indifferent to public opinion. It's become disdainful of the needs and desires and aspirations of the taxpaying public. Some of the examples of this, I hope we get into these later, but I think the Park District should waive SDCs for a number of years. the district seems to be still resisting granting the incentive for affordable housing. I think it's oblivious to the fact that we have the housing crisis, and the health of our economy depends on the ability of working families, including the district's own 353 part-time employees on affordable housing. The other two issues are Mirapon, of course. I think public process has been sidestepped, and I think the district has not paid attention to the needs of the public by building these huge projects and neglecting other things such as neighborhood gardens and things of that nature.
All right, good job, thank you. Thank you.
All right, so coming into the question portion, we'll come back this direction and then we'll alternate through the questions with whom we start. This first question, the City of Bend has asked the Bend Metro Parks and Recreation District to waive SDC's, system development charges, in an effort to help incentivize developers to build affordable housing. This, as we know, this is the big topic of the day, one of a couple. Do you believe that waiving SDCs does incentivize developers, and would you support waiving SDCs as a board member? And I want to remind everybody this is also being taped, and we'll have it on our YouTube channel at Bend Chamber, so you can go back and look at your answers.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because I want to cut right to the chase on this. And what I want to do is make it very clear what this election is about and should be about, and what this election is not about. This election is not a referendum on affordable housing. This election is about electing a board member to Bend Parks and Recreation District for the oversight and supervision of a 5-year, $75 million capital improvement budget. And clearly, affordable housing is an emotional subject. Is something that everyone takes seriously, including Bend Parks and Rec. I will just point out in the 30 seconds that I have left that Bend Parks and Rec subsidizes approximately $1.3 million a year for recreational programs on a needs-based assistance. And people who are going to be living in affordable housing are ones who are going to be using the parks, which are provided free, also subsidized at the cost of over $5 million a year to the community. And this is not a one-issue election. It has been framed as a one-issue election, but it should be about what does Bend Parks and Rec do for the community, how it works in the community, and the contribution that it makes to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do believe that waiving SDCs could incentivize developers to build affordable housing. And when I speak of affordable housing, as I mentioned at last week's forum, I'm specifically talking about the types of housing projects that Housing Works might build that really target people that are at that 60% or less than the median income in this area. It's a much greater discussion, certainly in 1 minute for each of us, and I would agree with Dan. This election is not a referendum on affordable housing, but it is an important aspect. And I think my experience working as a consultant that works in private practice, but works with lots of communities around the Northwest, I've seen elected officials decide to either waive SDCs or keep rates constant, and that really transfers the burden of real needed demands to people down the roads. If you don't match a reduction in SDCs with a reduction in your aspirations. And so if I'm elected, I would support a multi-year waiver of SDCs for qualified affordable housing. And I defined that just a few moments ago. And but it's going to take a lot more than the parks. The supply of land and UGB is a much larger issue that affects it.
Thank you. Oops.
I'm going to agree with Brady on this. I think it possibly is the defining issue of the election. I think it's indicative of a deeper problem with the Park District, which I'm calling an indifference, a disdainfulness, a willingness to just proceed, as Bolton said, residing on an idyllic plane of existence. I think it's just losing its way. One of my friends my friends proposed a possible way to go about this, using SDC waivers for multifamily buildings only and nonprofit affordable housing organizations only. And I'm also concerned at the obfuscation that the executive director, Don Horton, usually addressed Eric King, the city manager, posing a number of very, what I think, confrontational and obfuscation questions and objections.
It was challenging, I understand, to answer that question in 60 seconds. We thank you all for going ahead and completing your sentence and your thoughts on our behalf. And during the Q&A time with the audience, we hope that if there are remaining things you wish to address, you take it up as well. So this next question, we're going to start with Brady, and Kelly will take us from there.
The next big current topic, full of both questions and decisions, is the fate of Muir Pond. And this is a three-pronged question, so I think I'll go down the line and ask the first question of the three of you, and then, like I said, the 3 points to it. The first question is, do you support the current plan to develop Muir Pond? Start with Dan.
No, we'll start with Brady.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brady.
I support the current plan to the extent that it maintains Muir Pond as an iconic Bend feature. But there was a lot more details to be worked out, and as evidenced by letters that the Parks District has received from a number of environmental interests and other stakeholders in our community. There's a lot more that needs to be defined, and that's one reason we're seeing that local environmental groups have not necessarily wholeheartedly signed on. There's more details, and that's all the case as it always is in projects like this. I think that the current plan, to the extent that it maintains the general nature of Muir Pond, I support. The nature of the downtown redevelopment, the public-private partnership is going to be challenging, and it's going to have there's going to be a lot of discussion about really the right way to proceed with that. The development of a urban renewal district in the downtown area, I studied that somewhat, and I think that that type of district would be run by the city, and that could certainly be a great way to fund significant improvements. But we're at the very beginning stage. There's lots more details to be worked out.
Among the questions environmental organizations have raised, for instance, what are the measurable objectives for improving fish, bird, and wildlife habitat? What are the plans for water quality monitoring and mitigation over the next 20 years? Questions about the redevelopment plan, how will transportation options be included in the parking plan, the current lots? And these are just a number of questions that really have not been answered in the visioning process, as they call it. Also, public process, I believe, has been totally sidestepped. I call it Walton's call for a public referendum. Do we really want preservation of the pond? Or do we want a healthy, free-flowing river, as I've advocated for from the beginning? Thank you.
I do support the current vision that has been put forward collaboratively between the city and Mendon Park and Recreation and the ad hoc committee and the steering committee. And as far as the bulletin goes, they actually have to pick a direction and not talk out of both sides of their mouth. Because number one, they say, on the issue of affordable housing, that Parks and Rec should show leadership and seize the initiative and do what needs to be done. Yet, when it comes to Muir Pond, where Parks and Rec has done exactly that, they say, oh, no, you're not listening to the community. You need to do a scientifically studied survey, a scientifically prepared survey to find out what the community wants. So I think what we have right now is the best of difficult choices that we can put a stake in the ground and go forward and explore further, both financially and from a redevelopment standpoint. It's a complex deal. There's no question it's a complex deal, but the most important part of it is that it does not rely on taxpayer dollars. It relies on the private development funds, which is key to not saddling the cost to taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Next part of the question, do you favor dredging or not? We'll start with Brady each time,
Okay.
all the Mirror Pond questions.
Dealing with the long-term sediment management issue in Mirror Pond is one of the most difficult aspects technically to maintaining Mirror Pond as a feature in our downtown. The duration of time that's passed since the pond was last dredged has been on the order of 30 years, and dredging the pond will be a necessary part, I believe, of any type of restoration. But that's one of the details to be worked out, because the parties that now own the land underneath Mirror Pond have gone on record asking or expecting that the pond's surface will really not be reduced more than about 10%. And it's basic science, the sedimentation of water. As the load continues to come down the Deschutes River, it's going to settle out in Mirror Pond. And so I think we have to be frank, we have to be practical, and develop an overall concept that safely deals with sediment, safely addresses continued deposition from the City of Bend stormwater system into the pond. Yeah, that's probably one of the most challenging parts of the project. And but it's a well-studied science, and I think there are certain professionals that can help advise the district and the city and others on that.
One benefit of a free-flowing river is presto, no sediment. Right now, Mirror Pond is classified as an impaired river. It's too warm, it's too deoxygenated, and it's too much sediment for guys like this to flourish. The Boise River, downtown Boise, is part of a greenway. It's healthy, it gets healthier every year. People love it. There's parkland, there's trails. It costs only $18,000 a year to maintain the greenway in Boise, along the Boise River. I think that could be our model.
The question of dredging is premature for a very obvious and logical reason. If you're going to do away with the dam, or if you're going to keep the dam, that threshold decision has to be made before you decide whether or not to dredge. There's a direct correlation between dredging and keeping the dam, or dredging and not keeping the dam. So it's the cart before the horse. The decision has to be made fundamentally what's going to happen with the vision and the design, and whether there will be a dam or there won't be a dam. And, you know, what does a fish say when it hits its head? Damn.
Next question, would you put the fate of Mirror Pond out to a referendum with voters?
I'm undecided on that. I think we need more definition on the scope of the project. It would be premature to put a referendum out, I think, without more detail and drawing some boundaries around what that project might look like. I think that the district can build on the types of stakeholder engagement that it's done in the development of Farewell Bend Park and River Bend Park as part of an effective model of finding ways to bring features to district projects that satisfy all the concerns in the community, or many concerns in the community. At last week's forum, I pointed out the First Street Rapids Bridge project, which proceeded to put a bridge across the river and improve trail networks on particularly the east side. That project was implemented and was done so with a lot of input from the local community that didn't want the river to have any fences put between the riverbank and the trail. And then the amenity brought hundreds and hundreds of people there who trampled the riverbank. And so any type of project needs stakeholder input. We don't have enough information to prepare a referendum at this time.
I think a referendum is absolutely needed to ascertain the values, the sentiment, the sentiment and the opinion of people. It can be phrased. Unfortunately, in the state of Oregon, we can only have a yes or no referendum, and some states have what they call ranked systems, where they can choose from a number of options. But I think a good referendum would be two choices. The number one choice would be, do you favor the current preferred option, the one that's being bandied about? And the second question is, do you prefer a a free-flowing river at the site of Muir Pond. I think it can be done very simply, very easily, and would leave no doubt. I mean, they've been using these biased, scientifically inaccurate polling, which Don Horton still points to astonishingly as evidence of the robust public process that is going on. We need a referendum. Thank you.
Well, I think with all due respect to my opponent, there actually has been a robust public process going on. Every meeting has been open to the public. All the information has been on the Bed Park and Rec website. There have been numerous outreach meetings. There have been numerous meetings among the steering committee, among the ad hoc committee. There has been involvement from State Representative Mueller. And I believe that everyone is working in the best interests and in goodwill toward trying to decide whether or not the current plan is a workable plan financially and sustainably, and that process should be allowed to play itself out to the logical conclusion, which would include, by the way, negotiating with Pacific Power, which people seem to forget is an indispensable player in this entire equation. And until we can put a stake in the ground and be able to go and talk to them from a position of strength, we're just going to be spinning our wheels.
Thank you.
This is Herb Foster to start. At a recent town hall with Representative Bueller, an attendee stated he believed the Bend Park and Recreation District was only for the wealthy. Do you feel the district is flush beyond its real needs? And how do you respond to such criticisms?
I'm sorry, can you
Sure.
repeat that?
Okay. At a recent town hall with Representative Bueller, an attendee stated he believed the Bend Park and Recreation District was only for the wealthy. Do you feel the district is flush beyond its needs? And how do you respond to such criticisms?
I only got that part about, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Flush beyond its needs.
To distill it, do you feel the district has more revenue than they currently need?
And that's a good question, and I'm doing a lot of door-to-door knocking in my campaign. There's a general feeling that that's the case. I think Dan is the budget guy. He's the one else to answer with more fortitude than I could, but I think we have, three. I think Don's one of the highest paid public officials in the county, $168,000 a year. Two others making more than $100,000. There's the impression that it is, and maybe it's not, but there's the impression. Maybe that impression needs to be dispelled somehow. I don't know.
Well, I think the best way to dispel the misimpression is with the facts. When in doubt, let's look at the facts. The Bend Parks and Rec District receives its funding basically from four sources: from taxpayer revenue collected from property taxes, from system development charges that's commensurate with growth in the community, from the recently passed bond measure, which is identified for specific capital improvement projects, and then from other sources, which could include grants, contributions, and public-private partnerships. All of those funds are spent on the community, on community parks, on neighborhood parks, on regional parks, on the 10 or 15 capital improvement projects that are currently underway and visible in the community as you drive around town. I don't think anyone who works at Parks and Rec, or certainly the volunteers who serve on the board, are lining their pockets with taxpayer money. And myself personally, I am doing everything as a steward of the taxpayers to ensure that their money is spent appropriately and as that money was promised to be spent.
In my discussions with folks around the community, as part of the community, going out and having coffee with folks, I think nearly everyone I spoke with draws balance the observation of the funding of the park district and contrasts it to, say, the city, where the city has significant deficiencies in the street network and other services. I think the district is very well run. I think the administration and the staff are delivering the services that are part of their comprehensive plan and part of their charter with great efficiency. But I think the greater question is, what does the district provide to our community? I think it clearly differentiates the quality of life if you compare our community to other comparable communities, other places I've lived. It's a big differentiator, but at what cost? And if you look at your tax bill, and it does cause some questions. And we get back to, is it affordable for families to be here? So I think as a board member, I will certainly scrutinize new projects, and I think that it is important to consider the level of service that the district is committed to as a board.
All right, thank you. We'll start this next question with Dan, and also wanted to let you know that Kelly Blyer is recording this evening as well as the YouTube, and she'll have this on her program in the tomorrow morning on News Talk. News Stories for News Talk 1110 PBN News. Is that right? And you had quite a number of candidate interviews, or excuse me, all three of the candidate interviews in the Source Week this last week. Is that correct as well? That we can go look up for some more information. Right. All right. So Dan, starting with you, with Bend's population expected to expand, the shortage of ball fields has become another topic of concern. What do you see as the future of outdoor sports and field usage?
Well, the future lies in public-private partnerships, because the very candidates who are espousing giving away parks funds at the same time say, but we should also build a $30 million swim fitness center, and we should also provide more parks, and we should also provide more recreational facilities. The way we have gone about dealing with the shortage of parks and shortage of fields is by entering into public-private partnerships. We've entered into and I would extend this beyond just fields, but all recreational activities and developments where we have targeted key stakeholders in the community who have contributed significant dollars in the 7 figures to help offset and defray the costs of the capital improvements for those fields. And certainly that's what we're doing with the Bend FC Timbers and with the Bend Paddle Trail Alliance and with Bend Ice, so that we can build the type of facilities that we otherwise would not be able to build with taxpayer money alone.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got personal experience with the crowded field usage, the fall soccer, the recreational league, the elementary school near my home where we practice. We have 3 teams on one side practicing at the same time as others. And it's a real challenge, and one of the things the district should be committed for is partnering with Bend FC Timbers to deliver the unified soccer league in the fall. I agree with Dan in terms of public-private partnerships and in being able to leverage those types of cooperative agreements. I think there, if we talk about fields or other recreational facilities, I think there remains opportunity for shared use facilities with other local governments. OSU Cascades is the one that comes to mind predominantly as OSU continues to build out and plan out its facilities over the next 5, 10, and 20 years. I think this is another example of the type of coordination and collaboration that I hope to be able to really advocate for, and even more so than being already done between the city, the district, and other local governments.
Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. Partnerships. I think Bend Paddle Trail Alliance has contributed $1.1 million to offset and I'm going to say it, the $3 million cost overrun on the safe passage. No one likes cost overrun for some reason. I can't use that word. Mr. Coe won't let me use it in my response on both. I don't know why, but I think the soccer league has contributed $300,000, which is wonderful. Pickleball has contributed maybe no.
Well, and out of due courtesy, if you want to go ahead and finish the question yourself,
Okay.
because he is really waiting for his next response time as well, Foster.
Oh, okay. And pickleball and Bend Ice actually does not exist. I don't know if they contribute $0, but certainly partnerships definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. a reminder that later we do have the opportunity for you to ask a question, each one of you, to another candidate. So if there are specific things on your mind, I want to make sure we get that opportunity raised up. So we're going to start with Brady this time, and Kelly, you're on deck.
The onward communication between the city and the Bend Parks and Rec Board during the issue of whether to waive SDCs has raised questions regarding the relationship between the Park District and the city. Do you believe there is a communication problem that needs to be addressed? And if so, how would you proceed? We'll start with Brady.
I think that all of the city board members of the district and I would say all the city councilors have the best interest in mind of their constituents. I've met with nearly every city councilor through my professional work, just again inviting them to coffee to get to know them and understand their interest in the community. And so in terms of whether there is a communication problem or whether there is a challenge or not seeing eye to eye with respect to issues, I would believe that it just really comes down to being able to agree on basic facts of whatever problem we're talking about. If we're talking about affordable housing, if we're talking about shared use facilities, if we're talking about SDCs, elected officials from both local governments need to have the opportunity to talk together and agree on the basic facts of the situation before things develop into acrimony or other disagreements. I think many communities, Parks and Rec has served us out of the city, and that provides us a unique challenge with the district being a special district to improve coordination.
Being so gracious here.
I think the administration of Bend Parks has been one of the primary disruptors in communication, especially in the affordable housing, the SDC waiver issue. I'm just looking at this list of questions that Don Horton posed to Eric King. Things like he needs more, in response to partnering on SDC fee waivers. He requests more financial documentation. What evidence exists to show how this program has been successful in other cities? What's the goal to solve the affordable housing need? How's the city proposing to make up the created by the delta created by the waiving of SDCs? How's the city proposing to inform the public on this program? He even is thinking astonishingly again of a, and this is delicious irony of conducting a survey to see whether the constituents in his district support this. This is the same man who has time and time again denied his constituents the ability to decide the fate of your pond.
Well, I'm going to start by saying there's absolutely no way I can do justice to this in 60 seconds. I'm not sure I can do justice to this in 600 seconds or 6,000 seconds. First of all, I want to correct Foster on some of his numbers because you're off by several zeros. Bend FC Timbers is committed to raising $3 million towards the building of the fields, not $300,000. That's for starters. Second of all of our budgets are public record, are on our website, and I actually happen to have a copy right here of the fiscal year 2016 through 2020 capital improvement plan. There is zero cost overruns on the Bend Whitewater Park. I don't know where you come up with $3 million of cost overruns. There is zero cost overruns. As it relates to the relationship between the Bend and the city, between the city and Park and Recs, I think we have a very good relationship. I think we're working toward improving that relationship. Unfortunately, it's been an issue of timing. The city has been studying the affordable housing issue for a long time before they came to Parks and Rec and asked for our contribution. We're simply playing catch up. And frankly, the specifics that we were provided in terms of the dollars, the fund that they showed us, or the project that they showed us that couldn't pencil out, was due to $1.6 million in affordable housing charges, and the city is asking us to waive $200,000 in affordable housing charges. So I ask, how does the $200,000 solve the $1.6 million problem?
Foster, this question is for you. Do you think the roles of the Bend Park and Recreation District Board and staff are equitable and in balance, or should one take a larger role?
Right.
Repeat the question. The what?
Do you think the roles of the staff and the board are equitable?
And what was part two? Balance.
Should they take a larger role?
I've had the, I guess, pleasure of communicating with Mr. Horton on going back 5 years on a number of things, and one of the things he brought back to me, which is rather startling, was he said, "I speak for the board," and I think he totally has that opposite. I think it should be the other way around. He should take direction and from the leadership of the board, and not the other way around. And I think, in my opinion, the board is simply a rubber stamp for the executive director. And I hope, and I know, and I love, and I know Dan has a heart. I hope he's not falling on his sword for the executive director on this affordable housing issue. I think Dan would have gotten the endorsement of the bulletin had he been more open on this and not taking such a hard position.
Well, I do have a heart, and I care very much about this community and about what Parks and Rec does for this community. And I also agree that the bulletin did not endorse me solely on the issue of affordable housing, which, as I said in my earlier comment, is not what this election should be about. And I would also suggest that if you had been at our board meeting last night, you would know that I am not a rubber stamper. As a matter of fact, I was screaming, yelling, and pounding the table on something that I felt passionately about, and had further exchanges via email with Don today, back and forth from my sickbed, arguing about how we're going to reconcile the positions. I have the utmost respect and confidence in Bend Parks and Rec management and staff. I think they do an astounding job. But if I want information or if I want answers, I'm not going to stop until I get that information and until I get those answers. And so if anyone thinks I'm a rubber stamper, get the videotape from last night's board meeting.
The model of the district is like the model of a lot of their public agencies, and I think really the board should hire an executive director like Don that is an effective visionary and hires other people to get stuff done. And I believe that's what the district's done. I have had the opportunity to meet as a candidate a number of the district staff and have previous working relationships with some of the project managers, one project manager in particular at the district. But I think the district model and the balance between the staff and board is appropriate. That said, I'm aware of the amount of power, if that's the right word, or the amount of influence that staff can exert, and it ultimately ends up in capital projects, it ends up in operations and in programs. And the board has a right and has a responsibility to be able to look under the hood of the operations of the district, ask hard questions of the executive director, and in turn the executive director directs his staff, or her staff, in this case it's Dawn, to answer questions for the board, which represents the community. So we want to talk a bit more about that.
All right, Dan, starting with you. Would you support the acquisition of Troy Field by the Parks and Rec? And if so, what would you do with it? If no, why not?
Bend Parks and Rec does not have anything in its budget to acquire Troy Field. These questions are not grounded in reality. Budgets are what drive companies, and accountability and financial accountability is what sustains companies. Bend Park and Rec District is like a small business. First of all, people have said that we should tell the school district that they should not be allowed to sell Troy Field and that it should remain an open space. Well, that's akin to my telling you shouldn't be allowed to sell your house because I don't want you to sell it. What right do we have to tell the school district what to do with their property? I think Troy Field would be a wonderful component of the solution to the Mirror Pond downtown redevelopment. and should be considered if there are funds in the overall plan for the redevelopment to acquire Troy Field. Otherwise, we're paying for it with monopoly money, and we don't have, I'm not in favor of spending monopoly money when I'm the chairman of the board of the citizens' real tax money.
The questions come up, interestingly, it's in the board meetings I've attended this year, and other discussions around town. I don't support the acquisition of Troy Field, but it is currently open space in the downtown, and I guess I agree with Dan. I think this may represent an opportunity for a partnership between the school district and the city and the park district in terms of urban renewal. I think sometimes expanding the question and opening up the question to a more broad set of solutions can sometimes help find solutions that aren't obvious just if you look just down at, hey, what should we do with Troy Field? So I don't have any vision for that specifically. I don't think the district has a business trying to acquire it, and they have on record saying they're not planning to.
Absolutely, Troy Field is an essential component of down. We have so few open spaces left. We need to hold on to every single one we have. Troy Field is such a provides such a wide range of opportunity. Soccer. There's the annual reading of the names of the dead died in Afghanistan and Iraq on Memorial Day. Right now, essentially, Park District does have a partnership with the school district. They do use the field for some of the recreational activities. One of my friends in the downtown association said she saw the park district actually doing some maintenance on Troy Field, which I think is wonderful. I think the asking price is too high. It's almost $3 million. And certainly, we don't have that kind of money. Although we could have used the cost overrun on Colorado State Passage to buy it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Foster. This is, pardon me, Kelly, last question coming from us, and then time for us to share the questions that you have for one another. Oh, I'm sorry, Brady, did I just?
I'm just asking who the next question.
Yeah, it starts with you and it's Kelly, yeah.
And that question is, the subject of naming rights has been proposed as a potential public-private partner solution to stretch tax dollars. How do you feel about this proposal for additional stakeholders?
Well, the discussion that Dan referred to at last night's board meeting was centered around this issue, and so basically, for those of you who weren't there or are not aware of the board's position, I would characterize the board's position as Dan has professional experience that includes, in some way, I don't know this very much detail, the issue of naming rights through his professional work. The other board members characterized the issue as they supported an open RFP process with defined criteria to put out on the street for any potential appetizer to submit on. And so, that said, last night during Lindsay's remarks were on behalf of Don, Dan and especially was caught off guard with the fact that they were ready to issue the RFP like today, so that it would be going out Monday. And so, with respect to naming rights, it's not something I would probably lead with or find particularly important, but it does represent a potential revenue stream, and the district should steward every potential dollar that it should get. So, if I was elected and the naming rights issue was not resolved, I would be in favor of trying to get the best deal that aligns with the mission of the district. Also, that said, it did surprise me that Dan, as the board director, the board chair, was caught off guard, and apparently, by my observation, and was not aware that this was something that was ready to hit the street. And as a board member, I believe it would be my responsibility to be aware of something that I took such an interest in before it was ready to go live.
I think one of the corporations mentioned in one of the board meetings I went to for naming rights is Pepsi Cola. I don't know if that's still one of the companies being considered, but Pepsi did contribute mightily to the bond measure campaign. $149,000 was the total for this campaign to get people to vote for the bond measure in 2012, 52.1% did, but it took $149,000 to persuade them to do it. I think just looking at Pepsi, I think Pepsi would be a poor choice. It doesn't embody fitness and health, and they did work against the GMO labeling campaign. They contributed millions of dollars to defeat the GMO labeling campaign. So I hope we don't consider Pepsi. I don't know about other companies, but please not Pepsi.
Well, Brady is correct that in my professional experience as a lawyer in private business, I've had extensive experience in negotiating, drafting, and crafting deals for naming rights in the private sector. And it's something I feel very passionate about, where I see money going directly to the bottom line and benefiting Parks and Rec from an operational standpoint. If you look at the law regarding system development charges, you will see that capital improvement does not include the cost of operating or routine maintenance of capital improvement projects. Those naming rights from an appropriate entity, a local entity that is in line with the vision and the values of Ben Park and Recreation, would provide money that would go to offset the operations and the maintenance of those capital improvement project facilities, and would provide a commensurate reduction in the amount of taxpayer-funded subsidy that otherwise would have to go to pay for those operations. So given the choice between private business and taxpayer subsidy, I will go with private business every day, provided that it's in line with the vision, the goals, and the mission of the district.
So we're running a little tight. We'll go ahead though and get this started for the purposes of this portion, and of course I'll facilitate and ask my fellow moderators to catch things, please help us out here. Dan, again, in honor of starting left to right, your candidate A, Brady, your candidate B, and Foster, your C, just for the nature of trying to go in an order here that we can keep track of. Dan, you have an opportunity to start with whichever candidate that you would prefer.
How long do we have to respond?
You have 60 seconds. So, starting with you, Dan, who would you like to ask your first question to?
No, decisions.
Okay.
I suppose Mr. Brady.
All right, so Brady, this question is to you from Mr. Fishkin, and you have 60 seconds to respond. And if you could keep your question as concise as possible, too, please.
I would like to know basically what you feel is that I personally am doing so incorrectly, or to the point that you need to challenge my candidacy specifically. There are 3 seats that are open for election this year, 2 of which are uncontested, and yet you chose to run against me. And I'm curious as to whether that was by accident, or whether you had a specific purpose in mind when you chose to do that.
So as you know, I was one of the finalists that the board selected for the appointment to the position that ultimately the board selected Nathan Hodenkamp for. So myself and Ellen Grover, who's running for position 2, all the people who were finalists are running in this May election. I waited until about a week before the filing deadline, and when I went to the clerk's office, Ellen had filed for position 2, Nathan had filed for position 1, and you had not filed for the position at all. So, seeing the opportunity and not knowing that you would run, though, I think it would be a logical choice to try to run unopposed. And frankly, disappointed that when you did. But this is not about, as I said, and as the Bulletin's interview said, this is not, my interest is really based in my interest in serving the community, and I believe the specific skill set I have in planning, design, permitting, operation, and maintenance of public facilities. I'm not a parks expert, but I am an expert in delivering public facilities and helping oversee the expenditure of $75 million. So it really lines up with my expertise. So.
All right, thank you. Is there any need for follow-up on rebuttal on that or anything, Mr. Fishkin, on your question?
Oh, I'd love to.
Keep it quick.
espouse all the research that you've done prior to deciding to run for election, you basically made a hasty assumption that I was not going to run for re-election without even so much as making an inquiry. You simply beat me to the county clerk's office in terms of filing, and I had never, as a matter of fact, I think it was very well known that I intended to run for re-election, and a simple question would have answered that.
You good?
I don't need to respond.
Okay, all right, great. Moving on. Dan, giving you a chance to catch your breath and water and all of that. You get your opportunity to ask a question of Mr. Bell.
Well, Foster, I guess I'd like to know where you come up with your facts and figures and assumptions, because I like to live by actual facts. I think facts matter. And I think that assumptions, opinions, and reckless statements about grandiose, enriched, and Disneyland Park type attractions really are not particularly helpful or meaningful in terms of helping the electorate decide who is the best candidate for this position.
First of all, I was only 1-0 off on the soccer organization contribution. And even the Ben Paddle Trail Alliance in their website says, talks about projected costs being exceeding the original budget of Colorado Safe Passage. What do you call that $3 million over and above what the bond measure state?
I don't know what $3 million refers to.
The Safe Passage was sold to us as a project that would cost roughly $6 million. Now it's approaching $10 million. So what do you call that additional? Anyway, I think these big projects are grandiose. They are actually going to satisfy the needs of roughly 12% of the people in the district, according to polling. People much prefer that we build things like a new park and rec center, for instance. We've had several chances, and it's pay attention to neighborhood parks and trails.
Here. Do you have a?
Well,
You have 30 seconds.
okay. Unfortunately, is this on?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Foster, I respectfully feel that you are trying to reopen the vote on the passage of the 2012 bond measure. The people voted on it. People said what they wanted those funds to be directed towards, and we are implementing those funds as we're required to by law in a timely fashion on exactly those projects. And to say that, somehow we pulled the wool over the eyes of the community is just water under the dam, going back and saying, well, let's reopen this election and let's have it all over again.
You have 30 seconds if you need to respond.
No, 52.1% voted for the bond measure. Very, very narrow margin, just over 1,000 votes. I think, just like the Mirror Pond process, the bond measure was sold to the public in a very deceptive manner. I had one of the mailings. It talks about the legacy of parks and trails. It doesn't even mention the Simpson Ice Pavilion. I think we used $149,000 to essentially, I think, pull the wool over people's eyes. But that's, water against the dam, water under the bridge, I don't know. We need to proceed with that, of course, because that's what the people voted for, but I'm just very concerned and stirred about the way it was sold to the public.
Right. So Brady, your turn for your opportunity to ask questions of the candidates. Since I'm right here, I'll just hand you this one while we're working together. Brady, who would you like to ask your first question?
Oh, that's Foster. Foster, please describe your experiences in working for consensus and compromise.
60 seconds.
My experience in the public arena